morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at two of the more popular quote-unquote budget suppressors on the market. Right here on my right, we have the YHM Resonator K in its stock configuration, and here we have the YHM Turbo K in a not-so-stock configuration. Now, full disclosure on both of these cans is that I did pay my own money for both of them. I paid full retail price at the time, which was quite some time ago. At this point, I waited the full 270 plus days on the ATF eForm 4 system for both of these cans. Now, I do have a dealer account with YHM, and with that account, I have bought some adapters and mounts, but not really anything else. Again, the cans, I paid full retail price. I don't have any sort of affiliation with Silencer Shop, which I believe that's what I went through their kiosk system for both of these cans. Now, at this current point in time, I am not a big fan of either of these cans. I think that YHM has continuously made them a little bit worse as time goes on for different reasons, which we'll get into in just a minute. But before we get into my issues with both of these cans, we'll go ahead and get into some of the basics. Now, the Resonator K here on my right, this is a 30 caliber K can, and the Turbo K, this is a 5.56 K can. These are about the shortest, smallest cans that they offer. They are 17-4 stainless steel. Both of them have a Inconel blast baffle that is ported. Inconel, if you don't know, is a very good material for a blast baffle. Your blast baffle will usually take the most damage, the most abuse over time. Inconel is a very good material that maintains its mechanical properties over a wide variety of thermal conditions, making it very good for a blast baffle, meaning that it will last for a very long time, which you're going to hope for when we get into YHM's warranty a little bit later on. Now, both of these are fairly small and lightweight, but you can get them in a ton of different configurations, so I'll go ahead and list the weights of the actual cans plus mounts and adapters right here so you can get a feel of the general weight and length that you're looking at. Now, in the back end of both of these cans, they are the standard 1.375 by 24, so they are the industry standard pattern for just about any aftermarket mount that you might want to go with, or in YHM's case, you will want to go with at some point in the future, whether that's direct thread or something a little bit more special. Now, the finish that these are done in is a black Cerakote that is garbage. If you touch anything with these, they will scratch. Not really a big deal. It's fairly minor. I mean, eventually you're probably going to cover them or paint them with something. So not really a big deal, but the factory finish is very poor. Now, another minor gripe that I have with the cans is that the included spanner wrenches are trash. They're very bad. They're not strong enough to really do what you're going to need to do with them, especially if you shoot them a lot. At this point in time, I have shot almost 99 to 100% suppressed since I've had these cans, probably 10 plus thousand rounds on both of these cans, and removing the adapter like I did with the Turbo K was almost impossible with the included spanner wrenches. Again, they're made out of soft plastic, almost obviously they're steel of some sort, but really bad, and it was very, very difficult to get them off. Having a nice aftermarket set of spanner wrenches is probably the better way to go. The ones that they include are perfectly fine from the factory, but if you actually start to shoot and use them and try and get the adapter off, good luck. Now, getting into the first in a series of fairly major complaints that I have with the YHM cans is that their warranty slowly went downhill over time. So they originally had a lifetime warranty on their cans, which is fantastic. I think basically any suppressor should have a lifetime warranty with it, within reason, of course, because these cans, once you buy them, they are essentially yours forever. You're never really going to be able to sell them. It is theoretically possible, but no one's going to buy a used YHM can off of you after you decide that you don't like them anymore. So the warranty got degraded. They technically still have a lifetime warranty from manufacturer's defects, but normal wear and tear and a variety of other circumstances are not covered under warranty. They do technically have a buy again program, so if something happens to your suppressor, you can buy a new one for 50% off the MSRP. However, the second problem that I have with the YHM cans is that they continually get more expensive. So by the time you burn one of these out and you get 50% off your new can, you'll probably pay just as much as you did for your original can. These cans used to be $350. Now the Resonator K has a MSRP of $650, and it's just not worth that much money. for the performance that you're going to get out of it. Now, I think Silencer Shop has it on sale for $550, which is still not a great price. When I bought these cans, they were right around the mid $400 range, which was already starting to push it a little bit when we get into what I'm going to talk about later on. So I think in total, after taxes plus tax stamps, I spent just under $1,400 for both of these cans. So they've continuously gone up in price, and they keep getting more and more expensive, and the performance isn't getting better. They're just charging more for them, and the warranty, keep in mind, has also gone downhill. Now, the major performance issue with these cans, now let's get something out of the way first. These are both K cans. I understand that. I'm not looking for the best suppression. I bought these originally because they were short, lightweight, with a very strong material, 17-4, plus an Inconel blast baffle, so they were going to be very durable or over a very long period of time, and they didn't break the bank. In terms of actual suppression, just by virtue of being cake ones, neither one of them is particularly good, even with subsonic ammo. However, I knew that. They give you enough of a signature reduction while being very small, lightweight, and not unwieldy at the end of a gun, because keep in mind, my main purpose is to actually shoot things, so I don't want a big, heavy can that sounds nice every time you shoot it without hearing protection, but it's still too loud to be comfortable. I wanted something that gives you enough of a signature reduction, enough of a flash reduction, and was small enough, light enough, cheap enough, and durable enough to fit the bill for somebody who shoots a lot. So yes, the sound suppression isn't great, but that's not my concern with them. My concern with the performance is going to be with the stock adapters and mounts, which are not very good. Now, the worst case scenario that I have ever had is with the LWRC 12-7. This is a heavy barrel, cold hammer forged, Nicore treated barrel. Very nice barrel, very accurate as well. You can definitely get it down to around 1 MOA with good ammunition. But with the included adapter and mount on the YHM Turbo K, the dispersion that I was getting was absolutely awful. So it would basically anywhere from double to triple my group size, even with good ammunition. So like, let's say 69 grain ADI, it would go from 1 to 1.5 MOA all the way up to 4 or 5 MOA, which made it difficult to take out to even quote unquote extended distances like 400 or 500 yards. Now, getting into the mounts and adapters, this is the 4302. This is what came with my Turbo K. You can get it with different mounts from the factory. You can get it in this configuration. You might be able to get it in a shorter flash hider, and then of course muzzle brakes as well. Unfortunately, they all use the same mounting mechanism. Now, the mount design, or at least the theory behind it, should work quite well. You have a taper on the inside of your adapter and a taper on the outside of your mount, which should, in theory, line up very well. Now, unfortunately, you have some very coarse threads on the mount, and then you have a lock ring, and then of course you have kind of a ratcheting system on the adapter that should, in theory, match up and make sure that it holds tight against the taper so that it doesn't loosen on you, and it provides a very good, consistent seal. Now, the problem is that the tolerances on the mounts and adapters is just too loose, and so they almost never match up quite perfectly. Now, depending on what mount and what adapter you're using, some of them can work quite well. The best case scenario is, of course, that they both just magically line up perfectly, and the lock ring, the ratcheting system, and the taper all line up perfectly, and you just tighten it down and you're good to go. However, that really hasn't been the case on any of mine. The best case scenario on mine is to where it's locked down very tight on the taper, but you have just a little bit of play before you get the lock ring over to the next notch. And so you can just move the lock ring over so that it holds it nice and tight against the taper. That's the best case scenario. However, again, depending on what mount and adapter you're using, you're going to get a very mixed bag of results. So, on certain suppressors, on certain barrels, certain mounts and adapters, I would get very little dispersion and mediocre point of impact shift. So point of impact shift is going to be, obviously how far it shifts versus suppressed versus unsuppressed. And the dispersion is going to be basically the change in group size. So again, with this specific adapter and this specific mount, I had a horrible time on the LWRC 12-7 with most of my YHM, the actual factory YHM adapters and mounts. I was getting anywhere from 50% increase in group size with good ammo to triple the group size. So depending on your barrel, mount, adapter, suppressor, you could be getting drastically reduced performance just by putting a fairly small and lightweight suppressor at the end of your gun, which is of course not what you want when you've spent after taxes $600 to $700 on a suppressor, or if you bought one now, even more. Now to be clear, the LWRC 12.7 plus the factory YHM mount and adapter was the worst case scenario possible at about anywhere from double to triple the group size, which is just awful. Most of the time I would get like a little bit over like a ½ inch extra on the group size. So I'd go from like 1.5 to 2 MOA, which isn't horrible. And you'd have about maybe 2 MOA point of impact shift, but not great, but not necessarily horrible either. And again, keep in mind that almost every single mount and adapter combo is going to perform a little bit differently, line up a little bit differently. Some of the lock rings are going to work good, some of them aren't. So it's going to vary between almost every single mount and adapter you use. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and as you see it here, the YHM Turbo K, this is not in its stock configuration. The adapter that I'm currently using, this was sent out by a kind gentleman, a kind follower of the channel. This is the ASR Castle Cap. This is a titanium adapter for the Rearden Plan B mount. The Q Cherry Bomb, I believe, uses the same mounting pattern as well. It is basically very simple. So I believe this is a Rearden flash hider, which, as you can see, the taper on here does work quite effectively. You can tell all the carbon is trapped just before it. So it mounts onto a very fine thread pattern, screws down, and then it hits the taper. You tighten it down just like a little bit, hand tight, and then it doesn't move whatsoever. And as you might also be able to tell, that is considerably smaller and lighter than anything YHM is offering from the factory, going from this huge adapter and flash hider. Even if it was one of their shorter flash hiders, it would still be quite a bit bigger and heavier than this mount and adapter combo. So testing for dispersion and point of impact shift at 100 yards using the Resonator K in its stock configuration with its stock adapter and a YHM muzzle brake mount. That one there was mounted to a Geisley 11.5, which is a very accurate cold hammer forged barrel, fairly short as well, so hopefully we're not getting too much deflection on there. And again, everything torqued down properly on that guy at 100 yards with 69 grain match ammo from Remington. I believe it was a Sierra Match King loading, so a fairly accurate loading. With just the muzzle brake, I was getting about 1 MOA at 100 yards, which is fantastic. Go ahead and thread on the Resonator K, which again, that lock ring requires just a little bit of movement to get it to lock down nicely so that the tapers are matched up and held together. And I got about 4 inches point of impact shift, which is pretty terrible, though keep in mind that's going to depend on your ammunition choice and barrel. Now, it's a very high quality ammo and barrel that we're using with the factory YHM adapter mount and of course the Resonator K, which again, it's not that heavy of a can. But we got about 4 inches point of impact shift and about an extra half MOA on the group size. We went from about 1 MOA to 1.25, 1.5 MOA. So we got an increased group size and about 4 inches point of impact shift. Now, point of impact shift is never ideal. However, if you're never going to be swapping the suppressor off, then maybe it's not a very big deal to you personally, but it is definitely something you should be aware of. If you just throw on a suppressor and you think you're going to be close enough, well, 4 MOA, depending on how far you're shooting, may not be very close at all. Now, comparing that to the point of impact shift and dispersion that we got with the YHM Turbo K, with the aftermarket cap, the ASR Castle Cup, and the Rearden flash hider / mount, we got about 2 MOA point of impact shift, which still isn't perfect. However, the dispersion was negligible, and in fact, the group size might have actually been a little bit smaller overall. Now, keep in mind that we use the same ammunition from the exact same box for both of the tests. This barrel that's in this build currently, this is a 13.7 Hansen, so not a particularly heavy profile. It is the .750, not the .625 profile Hansen, but it's a fairly middleweight profile, very efficient. The Geisley taper profile is very similar, maybe a little bit lighter towards the end, but it's a little bit shorter, so might overall be a little bit more rigid. So keep in mind that we went from having dispersion issues on basically every build that I put the YHM Turbo K on to basically removing dispersion from the equation just by swapping out the mounts and adapters. Now that brings us back to some of my original complaints, was that the warranty has gone downhill. In fact, I believe in their warranty they state if you modify their suppressors, that will void the warranty. So does swapping out the adapter to an aftermarket adapter, does that void their warranty? I don't know, and I wouldn't want to check that out. Now, on top of that, the price of the suppressors themselves has continually gone up. Now, combine that with the fact that the included mounts and adapters aren't particularly good and can cause issues, and in certain cases can just rob your build of quite a bit of performance. So that means that you might have to swap them out, which is going to again feed back into increasing the price of the suppressor. So for instance, if you bought a YHM Resonator K for like $550 and then spent another $150 on aftermarket mounts and adapters, well, you probably should have just bought a better suppressor to begin with if you're already going to be spending all of that extra money. Keep in mind that if you do buy a suppressor that is a little bit more expensive, it's probably going to have a much better warranty and better mounts and adapters out there already. So as it stands currently, I wouldn't really recommend you buying a Turbo K or a Resonator K unless you're just absolutely strapped for cash and have to buy the cheapest suppressor on the market, and you're willing to play Russian roulette with the mounts and adapters and hoping, fingers crossed, that it works well with your specific setup, and you're willing to accept the fact that the warranty really doesn't hold up as well as it used to. If you're willing to do those things, then maybe the YHM Resonator K or Turbo K can make sense. However, if you're planning on buying one and you're like, oh, I'll just swap out the mounts and adapters, you should probably just start out with a better suppressor. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. You're still going to have to wait 9 months to a year for both of them. Keep that in mind, that you're also going to have these cans basically for the rest of your life. You're never really going to be able to get rid of them. So suppressors, again, I went ahead and bought 2 of the cheapest cans that I could at the time. And then the more I used them, the more I didn't like on them, the more I had to change about them. So I had to spend even more money to kind of fix the issues. So I probably should have started with a better can to begin with that has a better warranty, that comes with a better family of mounts. Even like Chemo isn't something that's necessarily small, compact, and lightweight, but it does have a good set of mounts and adapters on the marketplace. They're cheap, they're plentiful, you can find them basically anywhere, and at least from what I've seen and the reports that I've heard, they don't rob your system of performance just by putting the item that you paid for on the end of your gun. Now, I do believe YHM could fix this issue and bring their cans back to the Budget King. They would have to fix their warranty and go back to a true lifetime warranty on their cans and actually stand behind the products that they make. That would be step number 1 for me personally. And on top of that, they would have to ditch their old poor mount design. These are big, they're heavy, and they just don't work all that well. In some cases, they work terribly. In some cases, they might work just fine. Now, YHM did come out with a new mounting system called SRX, which is basically a clone of your standard taper mount. Very simple, fine threads that screw the suppressor down onto a taper. They do sell the adapters and mounts. Now, I haven't tried them, so I can't say if they work quite as well as the Reardon or any of the other taper mounts or other mounts that are out there on the market. And I continually have to ask myself, how much money do I want to spend on YHM cans to fix YHM cans? But if that does fix the dispersion issues, if that does fix the issues with fitment and making sure that everything lines up properly, then YHM should just offer those as the standard adapter and mounts. And personally, I would recommend that they straight up ditch their old ratcheting style of mounts. They're bigger, they're heavier, they're more complex, and they just don't do as good of a job as something that is incredibly small, lightweight, and efficient, and I would imagine cheaper to manufacture as well. So hopefully, if they can keep the prices down, increase their warranty, and provide a good adapter and mount that works well enough from the factory, then I think YHM would be a can worth looking at. As it stands right now, they're getting more expensive, the warranty's getting worse, and you have to spend money on them to get the most performance that you can out of them. So I bought them, I have them, I shoot them quite a bit, and I don't particularly like them, so I don't really recommend you should get one either. I think that there are higher value suppressors that might be a little bit more expensive, but they're going to work a little bit better. The mounts and adapters they come with are a little bit better, and they have a better warranty, which is very important when, again, these are, for all intents and purposes, these are going to be yours. And if you set them up as a trust, your wife's or your kids for the rest of your life. So a good warranty is very important. So with all that out of the way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think of YHM cans in the comments down below. The best aftermarket mounts and adapters that you've personally found. If there's any other high value suppressors that I should check out in the next year or so. And with all that out of the way, guys, thank you once again for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.